All right, so here's another example. As the previous video, we have a right triangle. We know one side, and we have the right angle. We have a given angle, and we only have one side length. So again, we want to get the lengths of the two remaining sides, even though technically we know this angle length. But again, let's just focus on what we have here. So notice though that there's no degree symbol here, right? So this angle here is actually in radians. So we could leave it like that, but let's convert it to degrees just to make it a little bit easier. And how do we do that? Well, again, we're going to multiply, like so, by 180 degrees all over pi, as we saw in a previous video. So we get 11 times pi times 180 degrees all over 36 pi. Now this is all going to be in degrees now. So what ends up happening? Well, the pi's are going to cancel, and we're going to be left with 11 times 180 all over 36. So here, of course, you might want to use your calculator. Well, on top, it turns out you get 1,980 all over 36 degrees. And if you do the calculation correct, if you use your use a calculator, or we'll do the calculation correctly, you get 55 degrees. So that is what this angle is, 55 degrees. All right, so using that, let's try and figure out what A is. Well, again, here we know the hypotenuse, right? That's what 10 is, the hypotenuse, the side opposite the 90-degree angle. The A here, that's the adjacent side. The adjacent side. Well, what trig function involves the hypotenuse and the adjacent? Let's see. So, by SOHCAHTOA, right, which is what we're doing, we have adjacent and hypotenuse here. We're going to use cosine. That's what the C stands for. So again, we have cosine of the angle is adjacent over hypotenuse. So cosine, again, the angle we just did is 55 degrees, okay? And that's equal to A, our adjacent, over our hypotenuse, which is 10. Okay, so now we want to figure out what A is. Here it's actually pretty easy because we want to solve for A. So let's multiply both sides by 10. So let me do that over here. We have a 10 here, right? And why does that help us? Because these are going to cancel, and we're going to end up with A, and we have 10 times the cosine of 55 degrees. But let me just write this a little bit better. We have A is 10 times cosine of 55 degrees. So again, we want to get cosine of 55 degrees. Okay, so that's where the calculator comes in. So from there, now, so what do we get? Well, cosine of 55 degrees is about 0.5735 8. Excuse me, let's be consistent. In the previous part, we used 6 decimal places, so I'm going to use 7 and then 6. There we go. Okay. So this is what we get. So cosine of 55 degrees is about this. Okay. So what do we get here? So we get A is about, multiplying this by 10, we're going to get 5.7356. So that's what A is. So now what we're going to do is we're going to find B. We're not going to use A though. Okay? We're not going to use A, excuse me. So here, B, as you can see, let me bring this down. B is the opposite. 10 is the hypotenuse. Opposite, hypotenuse. as before in the other video, right? If we go to SOHCAHTOA, right, like so, we have opposite and hypotenuse. So we're going to use sine. So that's what we're going to use here. So sine of 55 degrees, right? That's opposite, which is b, divided by hypotenuse. Hypotenuse is 10. Good. Now we're ready to figure out what b is. Just like in the other example, just like when finding a, really all we have to do is multiply both sides by 10. See if we can fit that in there. Okay, and that's good because we want to get b. So these are going to cancel. And we get from here, we get sine of 55 degrees times 10 is b. And really, this is the same thing as saying b is equal to 10 times the sine of 55 degrees. The unknown, I just like to keep the unknown on the left side of the equation. Here, you can multiply in any order, so we have 10 times sine of 55 degrees. Okay, so we have to calculate what sine of 55 degrees is. That's where our calculator comes into play. And if you do that, what you end up with is, so we have the 10 here from before, we get 0.81915.2. Again, I'm rounding to more than 4 decimal places. So here I'm using 6. I could use 5, but I want to use more than 4 because the final answer will be only rounded to 4 decimal places. But from here, we can see that b is going to be just 8.19152. So that's what our b is. And again, this is all using trigonometry.